Hey everyone, Selena for Who is Jesus Today? Who is Jesus today in our world on a global scale? One of my favorite subjects that I've taken in school, I will always say this, has been international relations. International relations has been a concern of mine for some time now. When I was much younger. As a little girl, I recall our set of encyclopedias were my favorite books. To just get in those books and to look at the people in different parts of the world and try to learn something about them on the level that I could read. It wasn't that my reading wasn't that developed, but certainly I enjoyed looking at the images. So yeah, I have felt this in my heart for a while, and this calling as well as pulling, and having in my heart too a desire to be, as God wills, a bridge that brings some of us in the world closer together instead of pull us more apart. I don't mean coming closer together with the wrong influence, with false teachings and doctrines, that I would cross over my belief system or anything like that. But I'm all open for having a rational conversation, even with my opponents. And so I like to address a few things today that came to mind, and in hindsight of what is going on in the world right now, and what's happening with Iran and Israel, although I won't get into that in depth. But I have a way I like to approach certain things right now, and not just jumping into the politics or even who's on what side or that side. But I like to speak about some things internationally relating to regions of the world, places on the map that have been set apart for primarily a religious beliefs, a religious origin and history that is strongly entwined with that region on the map, with that sovereign region on the map. And those places exist because of the origin, the history, and the practice of a belief system that is tied to that area. It's a few places. I didn't come up with probably all of them, but some of the major ones that also deal with three of the world's major belief systems. And we'll see. Let's dive first into Rome. Rome. What is it about Rome? Oh gee, well, some of us, we got Rome somewhere in our history because they were truly advantageous. They had oppressed many parts of Europe, throughout Europe, and the Romans made their way into Western Asia, or you can say the Middle East, and they also took a hold of Israel, the Holy Land. But before I even go there, I like to speak about Rome and how Rome is also celebrated and respected because Rome is tied very strongly to one of the world's largest and dominant, shall I say, branches of Christianity, and that is Catholicism. Rome holds a central position, very important, vital position in Catholicism. Why? It's the seat of the Pope. Okay, so is the seat of the Pope the location of St. Peter's Basilica? And other religions too. This connection goes back to the martyrdom of St. Peter and St. Paul, because they were martyred. And in fact, as I recall, Peter was crucified upside down. He didn't feel he was worthy to be crucified as his Lord. Many of you have heard of that, right? And a mainstream Protestant Christianity as well. So, what else is there important about Rome? So, Rome has developed the entire, say, administration regarding to the Catholic Church. The papal system is there. And during the day of Jesus, Rome was a major world power. Major world power. And it spread its wings on out into the Middle East, Israel, the Holy Land, West Asia, how you would like to say it. And it controlled the Holy Land. Jesus and his followers lived under the rule of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, though it is celebrated today with the Catholic Church, it's an epic center of Catholicism. And even though I know how vital the Catholic faith is to the island, the nation of Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, still the recognition of the most central and strategic position of Catholicism is Rome. And the Roman Empire really went from place to place and took over and dominated. It's interesting how in history and people all throughout Europe and the world will probably find some fault about the strategies and the oppressive behavior of the Roman Empire. But at the same time, those who are Catholics or have any Catholic sentiment have this special place with Rome. Disregard my phone if it keeps making a sound. Let me take it out. Okay. And yeah, and I would like to someday visit Rome, even for some personal reasons. I would like to visit Rome. But I just want to say that what's my case in point about making this particular content is there are places on the map that they exist with all of their splendor and grandiose and a respect, is because they are regions, cities, zones that are rooted in a religion on some level, spirituality, a place that is put aside in the world as sacred, like its own sacred region, city, country. We have another place. It gets even more, how can I say it? A specific and very much a strong sentiment in the Catholic faith, and that's the Vatican City. The Vatican City, the smallest, it should still be, the smallest city in the world, not just in Europe, on the continent, but the world. But it is really, really looked upon as a very important spiritual headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church and a sovereign nation state. It is a sovereign nation state. It is tiny, but it is a sovereign nation state. It is the seat of the Pope. It holds political and diplomatic influence. It is recognized worldwide as such. Yes, it is. It is recognized worldwide. It is the smallest a nation state. You can say the smallest country. And it has its full sovereignty. You cannot, it is highly respected and regarded, and it's off limits where you cannot, there's just some aspect of the Vatican City that average civilians like us cannot get involved with or put our hands on. Okay, so now we got Rome of itself there, and its importance. I find it hard to not have Catholicism without Rome. How about you out there? The Vatican as a city, a nation state, I find it almost impossible to separate Catholicism of the beliefs and the origin of the rise of the church without having a place called the Vatican. It holds both a political and diplomatic as well as a spiritual significance. Now let's go to some place that's going to be different outside of what's deemed here as Christianity, and we'll go into Mecca, the city of Mecca. In of itself, it is autonomous. It's a city, it's a region, but still, for the Muslims, the holiest city, in Islam, is the city of Mecca. It is said to be the birthplace, it's the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad. It is a spiritual center of Islam. I could go into more of that, but I won't, and my knowledge is limited. But I've heard for a while about the city of Mecca, and a whole lot of you out there have as well. Okay, so again, that is an important and strategic place. So we got Rome, we got the Vatican City, we got the city of Mecca, which Muslims regard very highly, in like manner as Catholics do of the Vatican City. Okay, let's go into one more here. Well, actually, maybe two. So, Israel. What is it about Israel? Is it really any different from what Rome is to Catholics, what the Vatican City is to the spirituality, the political ideology of Catholicism, the Vatican City? It is allowed to exist, and I have no problem with it existing. How about you out there? Because it does. Okay? And Israel, it exists as well. And some have a problem with its existence, but it does exist. And Israel has some similarities to what I just described about Rome, of the Vatican City. It's a country. And also Mecca. Israel. It's the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people. It just is, because it is. A place of deep religious significance for Jews. It is because it is. That's the history. That's the biblical recorded history, and that is the land in of itself. Israel is where the Jewish people's history, faith, and culture are richly entwined. Regarding the ancient kingdom, Israel North, Northern Israel, and Judah. We have a Judah, which is the southern part, the south. Also there is Jerusalem, that holy city. Just like the Vatican City is considered a holy city in the Catholicism belief. Well, Jerusalem is for Israel. The source of the origin of Judaism and the other Abrahamic religions. That's Israel. Do you see the similarities? With Rome, the Vatican City? Israel is different. It stands out. But if you want to talk about on the world map, where are there similar regions where their existence as a city, as a country, as an autonomous zone lies within its history of spirituality, and the people who were either the founders or they came about and they came together holding those same beliefs and becoming a religious community that married into each other. They married up, right? And they kept procreating. And so now anyone who has this history and root can trace their ancestral lineage, which is tied to DNA even, back to the land of Israel. I mean, you really can see if you have ancestors whose DNA lineage goes somewhere back to the land of Israel. The same way you can check and see if you have ancestry that goes back to Rome. Right. These are real places on the map that exist today. They have for a long time before we got here. And they will continue to exist. But there is something different about Israel. And I'll leave that for the audience out there, for people to really work over in their own hearts and minds. Sometimes I don't want, okay, put a little more light there. So now let's look at the continuity. Israel, there's a continual Jewish presence in Israel. That was going on even during the times of the periods of exile and foreign rule, foreign rulers that came into Israel. There's others, but for this content we will focus on Rome. But there are others. Yeah, you have the Babylonian, also that invasion. Not all the Jews actually left. They didn't all leave, though. A whole lot went into captivity and they moved out into other lands. Historically, the invasions exist. Historically, the captivities exist. Historically, there's been a struggle for the land of Israel to exist for a very, very long time up to present. Just want to put this out there. Now, it's an ally of the United States. The politics. Let's talk about the politics. The U.S. sees Israel as a partner in maintaining regional stability and containing threats from particularly Iran. So for us who are all living here in the United States of America, a lot of times, historically, those who are after Israel are after also the U.S. As has been said, death to Israel and death to America. I'm not saying that, so don't you dare say that I'm saying that. I am for the survival of every kingdom and civilization and tribe of people on the map. Okay, so I want Rome to keep going. Let the Vatican City keep going. Okay, how many will let say Mecca keep going? I put all these places in the hands of God Almighty. They're there for a reason. And now let's get to Israel. Let Israel keep existing, and let America keep existing. But here's the deal. America also has threats. America has those out there that doesn't want America to exist. Where are you living today? If you're living in the United States of America, on the soil of the U.S., you have enemies that do not want the land where you reside to continue to thrive and exist as it does and be free. And some of those same groups of people or nations don't want the U.S. to exist any more than Israel. So just so we know, if we do other research, and I'm going to be honest, I haven't gone deep into that for this content, but we are aware that often when people are saying on the other side of the world, the end of Israel, it also includes the end of the United States of America in their minds. This is what some in Iran have protested throughout its history. Many Iranians today, though, are on the side of Israel and the U.S., and they are tired of the regime. Just so you know, let's not be too out of touch with the people of Iran. God has a plan for other people in Iran. It has an amazing history. As we get into the scriptures, the book of Esther, we are talking about the Persian Empire. There's so much we can unfold of the history, the culture of the Persian Empire. We refer to them today as Iran. That's not a part of the Arab world. They are their own people. They are specifically the people of Iran. And God has his hand on that country. And we have brothers and sisters in Christ, for us who are believers in Yeshua, who are living now in Iran. And they're also struggling. We need to be, just keep this in mind. A lot of you out there do know. But sometimes we get into the emotions of who's right and who's wrong and taking sides and dealing with politics, government, and regimes, but the people of the land are suffering. Do you know how many women were out there cutting off their hair, because of the woman who was killed for not having her hijab on correctly? I've done some older content about that. So I personally am led, I feel by God. I keep an eye not only, say, on Israel, on Iran as well. And I am hoping the best for the people of that country. Sometimes we are speaking out of emotional, political movements. And what we believe and what's our political position and stance seems to be more important than what the actual civilians and the citizens of those lands are living with every day of their lives, what the women and the girls are experiencing under some of these regimes. Are they really our sisters? Because we have to know what is going on with their lives beyond the politics. And I can see any country in the world just beyond the politics or the regimes. And we need to see also Israel beyond the place where you may be today, and rightfully so, out of concern regarding this conflict with how the leader of Israel will respond to this, as well as we should be very concerned with how Iran has been launching attack. You think that if someone comes and attacks your family and your property, if you have the means to defend yourself, you probably will, right? I believe so. I don't have to wait for anybody to answer that. Or will you try to do a peace deal with them? You might. You may not live long, but you might try. So, this is what it is to be an Israeli. This is the history. There are politics that will always be involved. I would say I also don't always understand or agree with all of the politics. But should the land itself, the people, have a right to continue existing with their history? Absolutely. On a world scale, a point of view, and politically, internationally, but as a Judeo-Christian, I would say spiritually as well. Israel has a right to be there, just like Rome does for the Catholic people, and the Vatican City, the city of Mecca in Israel. So, the U.S. under just about all of the leaderships, but some, of course, more than others, right? Depends if there are a Dem or Repub, right? But the U.S. has had its own concerns with potential threats in the Middle East being launched on this soil and say infiltrating this territory. And internationally, you always have to be concerned, okay? But to think that any place you say, well, doesn't have a right to be there. Historically it does, politically it does, and spiritually it does. The same way spiritually Rome, a Vatican, a country, and Mecca has a right to be there, right? Because they are. Let's go into, So, the U.S. has had their own concerns with Iran. And that is regardless of where they are at the time with Israel. Let's speak about autonomous zones. Autonomous zone. A lot of you know about this, right? It's really not really a country. It's a place that people have established self-governance and its own independence. It kind of has its own systems of rules and political structure most of the time. When I think about an autonomous zone, the one I think about the most is Basque Country. Because in Spain, the Basque do not consider themselves Spanish. They're not a part of Spain. They're on the territory of the northern tip of Spain, which is also the border of France. So, southern France and northern Spain, Basque Country. They are an autonomous zone, separate from France and separate from Spain, but yet geographically still a part of it. And I think there has been, at this point, some, say, mixing of the people and the cultures, but they have their own language. So I think of about autonomous zone, then my mind goes on also Palestine. And I will not speak a lot about Palestine at this time, but it is similar to an autonomous zone, not entirely so, but close enough. Because Palestine has its own authority. It has some degree of self-governance in the West Bank. But even with its autonomy, we know there are some limitations that are placed on it. It doesn't have a full sovereignty, and it's placed on it by who else? By Israel. And I think we should be saying, why though? Why? Why? Although they have some autonomy and some control over their own politics, especially along the West Bank, why are they perceived to some extent to still be a threat to their fellow, a region there, Israel? Okay? I want you to think about that, to really think about it. It's not about either side doesn't have the right to exist, but at least that's not what I'm saying right now. Why is it such a concern? Because when you think about it, there are other neighboring countries in that region that share the same religious beliefs as the Palestinians, and that is Islam. And there's been not always the best relations either going on as far as intervention for the people of Palestine from other, say, neighbors that share a similar beliefs, if not the same, including Egypt. Israel sometimes feels kind of, say, surrounded by all of this because it wants to maintain its own sovereignty, right? Because what is the history that pulls the nation of Israel? Its ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, a place of deep religious significance for Jews. In a similar vein, Rome holds a central position in Catholicism. It's the seat of the Pope. So how do you take out Rome and not it impact the Catholic Church? The history of Catholicism. The Vatican City is the spiritual headquarters. It's the spiritual headquarters and is a sovereign nation, a sovereign country. It's the seat of the Pope. It holds the political and diplomatic influence, and we know it is recognized worldwide. A whole lot of us are nowhere near following the religion of Islam, but we also know they have their place too, called the city of Mecca. And then we go over to Israel. And then we have the more so autonomous region called Palestine. And if you check your history, going back, and some will disagree, and they have a right to disagree or their opinions, but I did some checking, and I've even heard some Palestinians admit it. Their ancient ancestors also were Jews or Christians, because Islam came to that area in the 7th century, but the Roman Empire was there first. And so the Roman Empire began to cause the divide with the southern kingdom that was Judah, which has the city of Jerusalem, and Christ comes from the line of Judah, that region. So for Christians too, there is a significance tied spiritually to the land of Israel. these are some things, I just want to really make it clear here that, and this is not something that I assume that a whole lot of you don't know, but sometimes we have to hear things a little bit broken down by the, say, perspective of just a teacher. This is not a debate. This is not trying to sell you. This is not a sales pitch. Okay? I want to bring, say, awareness for us to think and to ponder more about some of the things we say and the feelings that we have and why and where are they really coming from. Are we being told to think that way, or is this really in our hearts, or are we not really clear that if you're going to be against one having their sovereignty and their freedom to exist, then so what about the others? Because there are some similarities. We cannot dismiss that. A religious headquarters, a religious autonomous zone, a religious city, a religious country, a religious territory, because they tie historically their roots, their origin, their belief system to the area. In Mecca, they say this is where the Prophet Muhammad was born. Okay? So that's the connection there. And in Israel, there are also deeply rooted spiritual connections back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And with the region called Palestine and Gaza, in my perspective, they do belong there. It really is the same. I mean, you can't say they are exactly the same, but I believe, according to people that study, say, a genealogy, they are close to being tied in as the same people, at least anciently close enough. But there are, of course, some differences. In the same way, it is really incorrect to think that Iran isn't separate from the Arab world, because it is, or to think that Basque country is not separate and autonomous from Spain, because it is. But we must also, if we can say that one can exist, so can all. But we see, I've seen one of the hardest countries to exist, and what I have laid out regarding a religious and spiritual territories that are significant for its followers is Israel. But the Bible does back up the persecution that the land of Israel would experience. So whatever side you want, if you believe it or not, when I read the Bible, I do. The Bible is pretty large, and there's a lot of information. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of God speaking. There's a lot of prophecy. So reading like 100 verses in the year, it's so much you're not going to know. If you read 1,000 verses in a year, so much you're not going to know. There are very specific prophecies that does point out that what is happening in Israel today would happen. What do you think about that? Because when the prophecy is rolling out, and what was spoken hundreds of years ago, you're seeing before your eyes, there has to be something to that. I think even to the greatest skeptic out there, you have to agree. If we can show you the prophecies that some of these things would be happening, what would you say? What would you say then? I'll leave that out there for you to think and to ponder. What was this content about? Well, a little international relations, highlighting the significance of people's beliefs and how there are some places on the map that are held very dear and high esteem, and they should exist, and people do want them to exist. So why can we not also speak on behalf of the existence of the land of Israel? It has a history, and that history is as real as the history of other places on the map. Okay, it is tied to the Jewish people. That's what I have to say. Those are my thoughts. Let's continue to pray for the people of Iran, the people of Israel, the people in Palestine. Yeah. Yes, I want God's intervention for all of them. You can like and subscribe. Until next time, Shalom.